Hello, my name is Matthew, and for the month of March, I am reading all of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And I'm reading this with Steve Donahue. We're doing this for our own little book club, and also to read murder mysteries in mammoth quantities. And so here's the paperback that I've been reading. And I just read A Case of Identity. And this is the third Sherlock Holmes story that I've read. I'm not going to be numbering them because very quickly I'll forget which number I'm on. But it's interesting because the first story, the first Sherlock Holmes short story, we have Watson that's away. He's with his family, having his own personal life, and he's called in. And so there's a distance. And then in the second Sherlock Holmes story, he stops by Baker Street and he comes in, and Holmes is in the middle of a conversation. And so it's a little bit closer to the sphere of Sherlock Holmes. In the third story, it starts mid conversation. And so each one of the stories, for the first three, we're getting closer and closer and more intimate with the relationship of Sherlock and Watson. And their chemistry is so essential, so vital, just such an incredibly important part of the nature of the stories, and also a critical part of the enjoyment. So they are these murder mysteries. We're going to have every story is going to have Sherlock Holmes having a case. We're going to have somebody regaling a story, Sherlock Holmes listening to the story, the reaction, how Sherlock Holmes figures things out, and then the satisfying conclusion. But so much of what makes it a higher level, something that's not just a pot boiler, page turner, but the kind of literary entertainment that you can go back to is the nature of the characters, and the chemistry between two really strong personalities that are incredibly well realized. So that the personality of the iconic Sherlock Holmes and Watson is our keyhole. He's our entry into the world of Sherlock Holmes. And I read A Case of Identity, which starts with them having a conversation about commonplace events, and they're reading the paper and talking about how the most commonplace occurrences can be the most extraordinary, and how the most extraordinary events can actually be very commonplace, and paradoxical witticisms like that. And they are having a conversation about it, looking at the paper, and Watson reads an article, and then Holmes kind of reconstitutes the article, showing all the things, all the hidden messages that Watson missed. And while they're having a playful conversation. There's a knock at the door, and this woman enters, and she has a case. And so she starts telling her story. And there's the case, and there's the story that she tells to Holmes, and that we are listening to from the perspective of Watson, who is observing and listening. And not only do you get that story, but you get Watson observing Sherlock listening to the story. And for the third story, the first, A Scandal in Bohemia, and the second, The Red-Headed League, there is a drop in the quality of the tale, but we've already hit an extremely high bar. Scandal in Bohemia, The Red-Headed League, they can be fantastical and outrageous and larger than life, supernatural, but they're good. It's a really strong start to the short stories of Sherlock Holmes. And this one not being as good is not a detriment. It's just that we started off so good. So this one's not quite as good. It's a little bit sillier, a little bit easier to punch through, but it's great. It's Sherlock Holmes. There's dozens of these things. Some are better than others. My point is that chemistry, the relationship, the little moments that we get with Watson and Holmes in any of the stories that we're going to read still elevate whatever tale of the week that we're going through. And the woman comes in and she starts telling this story. It's a missing persons case of her to-be husband. She was going to be getting married to I always forget. It's Mr. Hosmer Angel. And so there's a woman, she's gonna marry Hosmer Angel. And through the retelling, she's it sounds really it's really like this like pulp comic Victorian like B-side schlock story that she works, she has a family, but she also has like a will or an investment that she has, like this great investment that she's like always getting this money from. And so you have someone that like just has like a mysterious source of money coming from some family member, and it's her mother and it's her stepfather, and she meets this Hosmer Angel, and as soon as they meet, it's a love at first sight. Their first date, she's now engaged, and they're going to get married, and they love each other, and they're writing letters, and the day of the wedding, this Mr. Hosmer Angel disappears, and The woman is like at her wit's end, and that's how she's found herself at the threshold of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. And there's all the details. There's the conversation. There's the interjections from Sherlock asking those pertinent leading questions to get information, what's going on in the story. And I'm being vague, but if you read the story, you get it. And she leaves. And so then you have, again, you have Sherlock and Watson, and Sherlock saying to Watson, what did you observe? What do you think? Sherlock, meanwhile, says, well, of course, the whole thing is completely obvious. We have a few loose ends that we can tie up, but I already know how everything happened, what transpired, how to figure it out. But what do you think, Watson? And again, we get like a retroactive description of the character that we just listened to this woman come into the apartment, tell her story, and at the end of it, we're getting the description of her. And the description adds a personality trait not only to that character, but also Watson's observations, Sherlock's observation of what Watson perceived, and then also Sherlock's all-encompassing observation and his philosophy of observation. Really, really neat. It's those midpoint interstitial moments throughout all of these stories that are enjoyable to go back to, and also maybe the best parts. Then we have the conclusion. Sherlock calls in the stepfather of the woman, and maybe since I've been so vague so far, I won't give out all the details, but he starts laying out his theory, and we have this person, the father-in-law of the woman, and it erupts in argument and confrontation and outrage, and we have this cool, calm, collected Sherlock who just knows. There's no lying. You can't lie. He knows what happens. What happened. And it's this person crumbling in shame or fear, just knowing they were caught. And it's a recurring theme that so many of the stories that we read are the strange ones, the minor ones, the ones that have a some kind of substantial intrigue. At the beginning of this short story, Sherlock even says the really big stories are easy to figure out because the motives are just straightforward. The small ones are so weird. They're much more interesting to like understand the psychology of how does someone come up with this kind of story, this tale, and figure out how to go about doing it. And as a result, it means that some of those small, weird misdemeanors or types of criminal activity are not necessarily persecutable. The the moment, the catharsis, is that Sherlock figured it out, and the person that was orchestrating this charade knows it. Sherlock got him. And so, yeah, like maybe not as great as the first two, but there are moments throughout all of these stories, just fantastic. So, A Case of Identity by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Reading this with Steve Steve Donahue for our book club. If you've read it, if you have any thoughts on anything that I had to say, please leave a comment if you would like. Thank you for watching, and take care. Bye.